At first it was survival, sleeping in the office to save money. But soon I became the ghost, the punchline, the joke everyone whispered about. And then HR made it official. I told myself it was only temporary. Just a few weeks. No big deal. Rent had shot through the roof in the city. My roommate bailed mid-lease to move in with his girlfriend, and my emergency savings? Gone. Thanks to a busted transmission and 2 weeks of unpaid sick leave. So I made a choice. Stay in some roach motel on the edge of town, or quietly crash at the one place that had heat, Wi-Fi, and no rent. My office. It was not glamorous. I was not rolling out a sleeping bag under mahogany desks or anything. I worked in a mid-sized tech company, nothing fancy. We had an open floor plan, meaning zero privacy, except for the glass conference rooms and the tiny wellness closet HR never used. That closet became my bedroom. 6 by 6 feet of recycled carpet and weird motivational posters. Perfect. I figured I could fake it. I had keys, after all. The security guards were used to seeing me work late. Hell, I had been known as the reliable one for years. I was the guy who stayed after hours to finish slide decks or fix last-minute bugs. Who would question it if I stayed a little longer now? The first night, I microwaved some instant noodles in the break room, brushed my teeth in the bathroom like I was on a red-eye flight, then slipped into the closet and stretched out across a yoga mat I found in the fitness room. I stared at the ceiling tiles and told myself this was smart, efficient, a financial reset. I even made a list: save money, find new housing, get back on track. 3 weeks, max. But time has a funny way of slipping when no one is watching. I got good at blending in. Showed up early, left late. Hit the gym nearby for showers, used the free trial week, then hopped to the one across town using a second email. Folded my clothes neatly at my desk, kept my toiletries hidden in a box labeled archive files, and smiled at everyone like my life was completely together. And for a while it worked. I felt like I had gamed the system. Like I had figured out a survival hack no one else was smart or desperate enough to try. But the thing about living in your workplace? You start to forget where work ends and you begin. And people? They start to notice. It began small, a coworker pointing out my toothbrush in the bathroom, asking, "Hey, is someone staying here late?" with a laugh. I laughed back. Crazy hours this week. Product launch, right? But that was the first crack in the mask. And I could feel it spreading. Because when you live where you work, it does something to you. Something you do not see right away. You stop being the guy who goes above and beyond. You start becoming something else. And that was only the beginning. At first, I convinced myself I was just blending in. No one looked twice when I used the break room after hours. I had always worked late. That was my thing. I stayed behind, got things done, helped others finish their slides before deadline. I was dependable, predictable. So it felt almost natural when I started staying later and later. I even created little rituals. After everyone else left, I would walk the halls like a ghost, checking the conference rooms, making sure the motion lights turned off. Then I would microwave dinner, usually canned soup or some dollar store mac and cheese, and eat alone at my desk, pretending I was just grinding through some extra work. The trick, I figured, was to stay invisible just enough. I showered in the gym across the street, timing my visits during lunch breaks or early mornings when no one from the office would be around. I kept my work clothes folded inside a file cabinet and used the janitor's closet mirror to shave. I even labeled my toiletries as UX wireframe markers, just in case someone got curious. But there were close calls. One morning, I came out of the gym and bumped into Laura from accounting. She was heading in, earbuds in, sipping her protein smoothie. She did not seem to recognize me at first, probably because I was wearing old sneakers and gym shorts instead of my usual khakis. She gave me a weird look. Not rude, just off. Like she was trying to figure out where she had seen me before. I waved it off. "Morning run," I muttered. She nodded slowly, but kept walking. After that, I started wearing sunglasses and a hoodie anytime I left the gym. I felt ridiculous, but it worked. At work, I doubled down. I volunteered for late tasks, joined extra calls, built up goodwill. The bosses loved it. They called me a team player, the kind of guy who was always on. I smiled and said things like, "Happy to help," even when I felt like a sleep-deprived shell of a human being. The weird thing is, part of me felt proud. I was saving hundreds every week. No rent, no bills, no commuting stress. I was living lean, making sacrifices, keeping things together. I had this vision in my head of future me looking back, nodding in approval, saying, that was the turning point. That was when it all changed. But life does not follow your script. Not really. One night, around 2:30 in the morning, I was heating up leftovers when I heard the elevator ding. That never happened. Not at that hour. I panicked, grabbed my food, and ducked into the wellness closet. I heard footsteps. Loud ones. Then the sound of a laugh. It was Tom and a couple of interns. Drunk. Apparently, they had come back from a company happy hour and decided to grab some snacks. I held my breath as their voices echoed down the hallway. Then I heard it. Yo, is that a sleeping bag in the closet? My stomach dropped. Someone pushed the door. Then they started laughing. I stayed still, back pressed against the wall, heart hammering like a bass drum. One of them muttered, "Dude, someone's living here." Laughter again. I waited. 10 minutes. Maybe more. When the coast was clear, I slipped out and erased every trace I could. Threw the sleeping bag in the trash chute, dumped my backup hoodie, wiped down the doorknob. But the whisper had already started. And the worst part? I knew it was only a matter of time before it reached everyone else. The next day felt off before I even sat down at my desk. People were too quiet around me. Not the good kind of quiet, the tense, glancing over the shoulder kind. You can always tell when someone is holding back a joke or pretending not to notice something. A few coworkers kept sneaking peeks in my direction. I caught one of the interns whispering to the other, then suddenly going dead silent when I walked by the printer. That is when it hit me. They knew. Not everything, but enough. Maybe they had seen me crash in the closet. Maybe they found my toiletries in the cabinet. Or maybe someone had just made a dumb joke that got passed around until it became something more. I heard someone mumble Casper behind me. That is what they started calling me, Casper the friendly ghost. At first, I laughed along with it. I pretended not to care. Told myself I had been through worse. I had. I grew up sleeping on a couch in my aunt's basement after my mom lost her job. I had eaten peanut butter straight from the jar to make ends meet. This was just another low point I would eventually rise from. But that name stuck. I started noticing it on sticky notes left accidentally on the printer. Someone had even scribbled it on the whiteboard in the break room one morning. Just the word Casper, in thick blue marker, next to a doodle of a ghost with a coffee mug. And then came the rumors. Someone asked if I was homeless. Another said I was running some secret startup and using the office as a cover. The most popular theory? That I had snapped and was living there after a messy breakup. I wanted to scream. None of it was true. Well, maybe some of it. But not in the way they thought. The truth was simpler. I had hit a wall financially, made a calculated decision, and now I was paying for it with more than just missed rent. I was losing my dignity. And I could feel it happening in real time. Even the way people spoke to me changed. My boss, Craig, started using this soft tone, like he was trying not to spook me. "Everything okay, buddy?" he asked one afternoon, lingering by my desk like he was watching for signs of a breakdown. I wanted to say, "Yeah, everything is great, Craig. I just sleep under your management memos now." Real cozy vibe. But I smiled and nodded. Just a long week. That became my script. Just a long week. By now, it had been almost 7. I started skipping the gym showers. Too risky. Instead, I washed up in the bathroom sink, scrubbing my face and armpits with paper towels and a travel-sized soap bar. I kept mouthwash in a coffee cup and mouth guards hidden behind fake office supplies. But no matter how clean I kept everything, no matter how careful I was, the smell of desperation was starting to show. I caught myself one night, staring at the mirror in the hallway outside the elevator. My eyes looked hollow, like someone who was halfway gone but still pretending to be there. That was the moment I realized something. The longer I stayed, the harder it became to leave. Because I was not just living in the office anymore. The office was living in me. And soon, it was about to turn on me completely. It finally hit me during an all-hands meeting. We were packed into the conference room, standing room only. Craig was at the front, waving around quarterly stats like they were lottery tickets, talking about synergy and workflow like anyone actually cared. I was in the back, clutching a paper cup of stale coffee, trying to focus, trying to act normal. Then someone said it. Loud enough for me to hear, quiet enough to pretend they didn't mean for me to. "Bet he's just here for the free heat." A couple people chuckled. I did not turn around. I did not need to. I already knew the voice. It was Nolan from Design. The guy who wore vintage hoodies like they were armor and had never once stayed past 6. I stood there, heart thudding behind my ribs, staring straight at the PowerPoint slide like it might save me. But the laughter rippled behind me again, spreading like oil in water. That was when I realized the story had spread further than I thought. It was not just a few interns whispering in the hallway anymore. Now, I was the office ghost. The cautionary tale. The guy who never left. And it was no longer funny. Not to me. I kept my head down the rest of the meeting. When it ended, I slipped out before the applause. I ducked into the wellness closet and sat on the yoga mat with my back against the wall, trying to breathe. My chest felt tight. Not from panic. From shame. See, when you first make a sacrifice, it feels noble. You feel like you're taking control, like you're choosing discomfort for the sake of your future. And you tell yourself it is brave. That you're different from the people who give up. But what no one tells you is how quickly that bravery turns into something else, something pathetic in their eyes. They do not see the plan. They see the guy eating soup alone at midnight. The guy folding shirts at his desk. The guy whose toothbrush is next to the hand soap. They see someone who failed. And the worst part? They do not even ask why. I walked into the break room later that afternoon to grab water and saw someone had drawn a little cartoon on the whiteboard, an office chair with a blanket draped over it, and a stick figure sleeping underneath. Above it, someone had written in red, "Do not disturb, employee of the month." Everyone thought it was hilarious. I stood there for a second, staring at it. Then I reached up and erased it without a word. But the laughter? It kept echoing even after the marker was gone. That night, I sat in the dark corner of the office, next to the vending machine that hummed like a bad dream, and tried to convince myself this was still worth it. That the money I was saving made the humiliation worth it. But something had changed. Not in them. In me. And when the next day came, it brought something I was not ready for. Something I could not ignore. It happened on a Wednesday. Midweek used to mean nothing to me. Just another day in the blur of spreadsheets and cold dinners. But that Wednesday carved itself into my memory like a scar. I was microwaving a frozen burrito at 11:30 p.m. My nightly ritual. The office was mostly dark except for the humming overhead lights in the break room. I liked it that way. Quiet. Still, like the building was holding its breath. I leaned on the counter, arms crossed, waiting for the beep, when I heard footsteps. Fast, light ones. I figured it was the night janitor, or maybe someone coming back for a charger. But no. It was Paige, from marketing. Of all people. She froze when she saw me. Her eyes went straight to the microwave, then to the paper towel I had set down like a plate, then back to me, still in yesterday's button-up, still looking like I had not slept much. Because I hadn't. I opened my mouth to say something. Anything. But she beat me to it. Oh, just that. One word. Heavy with realization. I forced a smile. Working late. She nodded slowly. Too slowly. Then her eyes landed on something I had forgotten. My backpack, peeking out from under the counter. Not my laptop bag. The other one. The one stuffed with socks, deodorant, and a pack of ramen I never bothered to hide well enough. Paige did not say anything else. She just grabbed her LaCroix from the fridge, backed toward the door, and left like she had just walked in on something she should not have. I stood there in silence, listening to the microwave beep over and over, until I finally pulled out the steaming mess and dumped it in the trash. No appetite left. By morning, I could feel it. A shift. People glanced at me like I was radioactive. Some avoided eye contact altogether. Paige did not sit near me during the morning meeting. She always used to. We were not close, but we were friendly enough. Shared a few jokes about Craig's obsession with KPI dashboards. But now, it was like I had grown an extra head. By lunch, the whispers were back, louder, more confident. I walked past two junior developers near the kitchen, and one of them said, "Heard he lives under Craig's desk." The other laughed and added, "Hope he's paying rent." Then came the nail in the coffin. Someone printed out a fake real estate listing and taped it to my monitor. No note. Just a photo of our office kitchen, with bullet points like, prime location, utilities included, and zero commute. I stared at it. No one claimed responsibility. No one needed to. It was official now. I was no longer the guy who stayed late. I was the guy who had nowhere else to go. The joke. The ghost. The punchline. And somehow, that little piece of paper, meant to be funny, felt like the heaviest thing I had ever seen. That night, I did not go into the wellness closet. I sat at my desk, lights off, and stared out the window at the city skyline. The buildings outside looked like they belonged to another world. one where people had real lives, real homes, real dignity. I thought about leaving, about disappearing, just walking out and never coming back. But I couldn't. Not yet. Because the worst part was still coming. And I had not even seen it. Not until the day I heard my name, spoken like a joke, by someone I actually trusted. I always thought the worst part of humiliation was the public part. The whispers, the jokes, the laughter in places where there should have been silence. But I was wrong. The worst part is when it comes from someone you thought might actually get it. The one person who had seen the work, the late nights, the overtime with no complaints. The one who had called me dependable, responsible, even someone the team can count on. Her name was Dana. She was a project lead, and yeah, I guess I kind of looked up to her. Not in a weird way, just respected her. She always carried herself like she knew who she was. Confident, sharp. She gave honest feedback, but never in a way that made you feel small. She got things done without stepping on people. And she was the only one who ever seemed to notice that I was drowning quietly beneath the weight of doing too much for too little. We had worked late on the same project a few months back, and during one of those long nights, she caught me eating dinner alone at my desk. She sat across from me, opened a protein bar, and said something I never forgot. Sometimes the people who hold everything together get left holding it all. That stuck with me. I thought maybe she saw me. Not just the output, but the person. But I should have known. Because that afternoon, while I was in the supply room looking for fresh dry erase markers, I heard it. Dana's voice. Just outside the door. I feel bad, but come on, she said. He brought this on himself. Another voice, probably Nolan, snorted. Dude set up shop in the wellness room. That's not working late. That's squatting. Dana laughed. It was soft, but it felt like a slap. I know. HR's already getting weird about it. I just hope they do not ask me to have the talk. That's the manager's job. Silence. Then she added, it is just sad, right? The guy's smart. But somewhere along the way, he turned himself into this mascot. Office dedication. Or whatever. And now, people cannot even look at him without cringing. Mascot. Cringe. The words hit like bricks to the chest. I stood there in the darkness of the supply room, frozen, one hand resting on a pack of dry erase markers, the other clenching tight enough to make the cardboard crinkle. I did not move until they walked away. Even then, I stayed a few extra minutes. I needed the silence to swallow me. Needed the walls to stop vibrating with the echo of her words. Because that was the moment I finally saw it. It was not just that I had become a joke to strangers. I had become a burden to the people I thought respected me. A problem. An embarrassment. Someone to whisper about, not someone to support. I walked back to my desk, eyes forward, spine straight. No one looked up. No one said a word. But I could feel it, the shift, the distance. Like I had been quietly pushed to the edge of the tribe. That night, I did not eat. Did not even pretend to. I sat at my desk for hours, staring at the lines of code I could not focus on, until the screen started to blur and my chest felt hollow. Somewhere around 3 a.m, I opened a new tab and typed something I had not searched in years. How to break a lease. Because suddenly, I realized the real lease was not on an apartment. It was on my pride, and I had been paying with it every day I stayed. But I had not walked out yet. Not because I wanted to stay, but because I was still hoping someone might look past the mess and say, you are not alone in this. They didn't. And the next day, the company made it official. It started with a calendar invite. Just before noon, a little pop-up appeared on my screen. Meeting with HR, 2 p.m., conference room B. No subject line. No details. My stomach dropped the second I saw it. That quiet little ping felt louder than a siren. Everyone in the office knows what it means when HR calls you to a closed-door meeting without warning. It is never good. It is never casual. I looked around the room. Dana was typing away like nothing had happened. Nolan was sipping his third iced coffee. Paige glanced at her monitor, but I could tell she had seen the invite land too. And just like that, the whisper became a fact. I was no longer a rumor. I was a problem being dealt with. I considered skipping the meeting, just walking out and never looking back. But part of me still clung to some tiny sliver of hope. Maybe they were just concerned. Maybe they wanted to help. Maybe they saw the situation for what it really was. A guy who got cornered by life and was doing his best to stay afloat. At exactly 2 o'clock, I walked into conference room B. Angela from HR was already there, flipping through a manila folder like it was a menu she had read 1,000 times. She smiled, tight and professional, and motioned for me to sit. Her voice was calm, polished, practiced. She told me there had been concerns raised by multiple employees, that there were boundaries in place for a reason, that while they value my contributions, the office was not an appropriate living space under any circumstance. She used words like disruption, policy, and liability, words that were supposed to sound neutral but felt sharp anyway. Then she slid the folder toward me. Inside was a formal notice, outlining the complaint, the expectation for immediate change, and a reminder that failure to comply could result in disciplinary action. Translation: get out. Now. I did not argue. What could I even say? That I had been washing my face with hand soap for 2 months? That I knew every vent in the building that buzzed too loud? That I had cried, quietly, alone, more times in the supply closet than I cared to admit? Angela gave me until the end of the week to resolve the situation, which meant I had 4 days to find somewhere else to go. 4 days to pack up my shadow life and pretend it had never happened. I nodded, thanked her. She told me to reach out if I needed support. The way you say it when you do not actually mean it. When I left the room, the hallway felt different, like the air had gotten heavier. No one looked up, but I knew they knew. The office had become a stage, and I was no longer a silent extra. I was the main act in a cautionary tale being whispered over Slack messages and late-night drinks. By 5 o'clock, someone had erased the cartoon from the break room whiteboard. Not out of kindness, just corporate cleanup. Scrubbing the scene after the spectacle. I packed a few things that night. My backup shoes. The clothes I kept under the desk. The half-eaten granola bars hidden behind the old server manuals. Each item felt like a confession. And as I zipped up my bag, I caught my reflection in the darkened window. I looked tired, but underneath that, I looked free. Almost. Because one more moment was coming. One I had not planned for. One that would break whatever pieces of me were still trying to pretend this was okay. My last Friday in the office came with rain. Not dramatic thunderstorm rain, just the cold, annoying drizzle that soaks your shoes and makes the city feel heavier than it already is. Fitting, honestly. I came in early that day, way before anyone else. I wanted time. Time to clean out the little corners of my ghost life. Time to erase the evidence before someone else decided to do it for me. But I should have known better. By 10:30, the entire team was gathered in the main conference room. Craig had scheduled a Q3 recap and morale boost session. Said it was mandatory. Said it would be light, fun, and important for team cohesion. I took a seat in the back, keeping my head down, trying to disappear into my own shadow. I figured I could ride it out, clap when needed, maybe even crack a smile if someone threw out a bad pun. But of course, Nolan had other plans. About 20 minutes in, during one of Craig's slides about workplace culture, Nolan raised his hand. Quick question, he said. Do we have a policy on, like, people living here? The room shifted. Quiet, but sharp. Craig laughed nervously. What do you mean, Nolan? Nolan grinned like a kid who just found matches in dry leaves. Just saying, he continued. If someone's going to treat the office like an apartment, do they get tenant rights? Maybe we chip in for their rent. Call it community support. Laughter. It started small. A chuckle. A giggle. Then it rolled, spreading across the room like a wave. Even Craig smiled. Awkwardly. But he smiled. And then he made the mistake. He looked at me. Just for a second. But enough. Enough to let everyone else know. Yeah, he's the one. The laughter got louder. Someone fake coughed. Casper. Another person mimed laying down on the table like a bed. It was not subtle anymore. It was not behind my back. It was not whispered in the break room or scribbled on a whiteboard. It was a show. And I was the joke. My chest tightened. My ears rang. I felt the heat crawl up my neck and settle in my face. I could have laughed it off. I could have stood up, cracked a joke, owned it, turned it into a moment of light-hearted self-deprecation. But I didn't. I stood up. Not fast. Not dramatic. Just stood. And in front of everyone, I picked up my backpack, the one they all knew held more than just a laptop, and walked out. No words. No scenes. Just footsteps. Quiet ones. And silence that followed me, thick and heavy, down the hallway. I could feel their eyes. I could feel something else too. Shame. And something underneath that. Rage. Not at them. At me. Because I let it get this far. Because I called it survival, when really, it was surrender. Because I told myself this was temporary, but let it become my identity. I was not the guy who lived at the office. I was the guy who forgot he deserved better. And as I stepped out into the rain, soaked, alone, and shaking, I finally understood something I had been too afraid to say out loud. This place was never going to save me. I had to do that myself. I did not go back that night. Not to the office. Not to the gym. Not to the vending machine hallway I had come to think of as my kitchen. Instead, I walked. No destination. Just soaked shoes, a buzzing mind, and city lights that blurred through the drizzle like they were ashamed to shine too bright. I ended up sitting on a bench outside an all-night diner. Not going in. Just existing near it. Watching people with real places to be. People wrapped in coats, holding umbrellas, unlocking apartment doors, laughing under neon signs. And I thought about all the ways I had lied to myself. I told myself I was being smart, that sleeping in an office was some kind of hustle, a clever workaround, a temporary sacrifice. But here is the truth. I had not been surviving. I had been shrinking. Every week I stayed there, I made myself smaller, quieter, easier to ignore. I folded my life into desk drawers and file cabinets, thinking that if I just waited long enough, things would get better on their own. I became invisible on purpose, and it worked. I became the ghost, but it did not make me stronger. It did not earn me respect. It did not bring me closer to anything worth having. I thought I was proving something, to my boss, to my team, to the world. I thought they would see my sacrifice and say, that guy's dedicated. But they didn't. They laughed. And honestly, I could not even blame them. Because somewhere along the way, I had stopped seeing myself, too. That was the real punch in the gut. It was never about toothbrushes in the bathroom or burritos in the microwave. It was about how quickly we accept scraps when we forget we deserve more. I sat there until the sun started to rise. Not because I had nowhere else to go, but because I needed the night to end. I needed that version of me, the one who waited for validation from fluorescent lights and HR memos, to be done. The guy who said just a few more weeks and meant maybe forever. I got up from the bench, water squishing in my shoes, and made a decision right there. No more hiding. No more justifying. No more shrinking. If I had to start over, fine. But I would start with my head up this time. Not bend over a keyboard at midnight, praying no one noticed how broken I was. I came back to the office on Monday. Not to work. Not to sit at my desk like nothing had happened. I came back to leave. Really leave. The building felt different that morning. Like it already knew I was done with it. The security guard gave me a nod, but I could tell from his eyes that he had heard the stories, too. Everyone had. When the elevator doors opened on my floor, I stepped out into silence. A few early birds were already at their desks. One looked up, startled. Another quickly turned back to his screen like I was something he was not supposed to look at. I went to my corner, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out the last few things I had left behind. A pair of headphones, a mug with a chipped handle, a hoodie that still smelled faintly like air freshener and microwave coffee. None of it felt like mine anymore. Dana walked in just as I zipped up my bag. She stopped when she saw me. Her mouth opened like she wanted to say something. Maybe she thought she owed me a word, maybe an apology. But I did not give her the chance. I looked her dead in the eye, not with anger, just clarity. And I said something I had not said in a long time. I deserve better than this. That was it. I did not explain. I did not yell. I did not wait for her reaction. I just turned and walked out. Down the hallway. Past the break room. Past the whiteboard someone had finally wiped clean. Past every door I used to hide behind. And when the elevator hit the ground floor and opened onto the street, I stepped out into real air. Not recycled. Not piped through vents. But real, messy, imperfect air. I did not have a plan yet. No lease signed. No safety net. But for the first time in months, I had something else. Self-respect. See, the hardest part about sacrifice is knowing when to stop calling it noble and start calling it what it really is, an excuse. An excuse to stay where it is safe, or familiar, or quiet. But comfort is not worth becoming invisible for. I thought living in the office was temporary, that it would pass, that the shame would be worth it. But what no one tells you is that temporary can rewrite who you are if you stay too long. You start to believe what people say about you. You start to fold yourself into something smaller. And one day, you look in the mirror and do not recognize the man who stares back. But not anymore. Not today. Because today, I walked out with nothing in my hands but everything I had left of myself. And for once, it was enough.